Welcome to the next episode of the NBR Podcast Summer Series, where my fellow journos don their boardies and think about the past 12 months. Putting on his retrospective shades today is senior journalist Jono Mitchell. What does he cover? Well, it's the economy, stupid, plus some banking and some other stuff. Jono, welcome. And as a man with the best broadcast voice at the NBR, I don't even know why I'm letting you on here.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction.
No
I don't
problem.
deserve it.
Well, anyway, let's forget about that part and move on. So this is what we do. We talk about the highs and the lows. And so for you, Jono, with your round of economy and things like that, what is the biggest loser?
Well, if you're looking at giving the economy a rating, I think at best it was a D. Would you agree?
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to give it an F because there's quite a few good things happening in the economy as well, but I think it was a pretty tough year. Following on, I think, from what Christopher Luxon said to you the other week, 3 years in basically a recession, it's been pretty tough. If we look at the end of the year and some of the highs, though, if we have inflation finally back in that key target band after a long absence, it's 2% or so that's a positive. And we've finally had 3 consecutive rate cuts from the Reserve Bank. So yes, Christmas might be a little bit easier for some.
Yeah.
There might be some hope that the economy is getting better next year, but it's certainly been a rough year for many.
It has, hasn't it? And one of the things that sort of stuck out to me, Jono, was that we were expecting the things to improve a little bit earlier, but not really the case, hey?
No. Well, if you just have to look outside, look around the streets at all the closed shops, a number of businesses have folded this year or are looking at new premises to go to because rent's getting too expensive. That's the case certainly in Wellington. We're seeing weekly stories and hospitality businesses, cafes going under. I guess it's the same up there in Auckland for you?
Yeah, it is. Although, Wellington has particularly been really hard hit this year. And I know that you looked into that, didn't you? You did a whip around the regions and the biggest cities, and Wellington wasn't that positive, was it? Wasn't absolutely positive at all.
No, it was pretty woeful, really.
Yeah.
So we did sort of a bit of a theme each month for our Dollars and Cents series. We started in Wellington to sort of get a gauge of whether Wellington's economy was surviving, thriving or dying.
Yeah.
A lot of it was about we're just trying to survive, not really a lot of thriving going along. I think the panellists were pretty hesitant to say the capital city's dying, but certainly there's been a lot of pinch points this year, a lot of public sector job cuts which have been dominating the headlines. I guess we can't forget the private sector as well has been feeling the pinch, laying off staff or restructuring and the like. So, we sort of went around the country. We started in Wellington, then we went up to your neck of the woods, Auckland, a little bit more positive up there. What really struck me was when we went to Christchurch. So we've had over 10 years of quake recovery, and there was a lot of optimism in the Garden City about what we like to call green shoots, new technology companies starting up. I think that's a banned word now, isn't it?
I think that phrase is banned, but anyway, we'll consign it to 24.
but a lot of positivity in Christchurch. Finally, after years of rebuilding from the quake, Christchurch is humming along. A lot of new businesses opening up, and the people we're speaking to, if you haven't been to Christchurch in the last 3 years, you haven't been there before. But the next one we did was in Northland, and that sort of brought us back to reality about current conditions. It's pretty tough up there in Auckland. A lot of hospitality businesses, they're just waiting on the government's plan for that new highway of national significance to come in to really link the North Island together. But it was a good insight to get on the ground, so to speak, and find out what different regions are doing, and hopefully we'll do more of that next year.
Yeah. I mean, look, that phrase this year, what was it? Survive to 25. Now we've got people saying maybe thrive in 25. Maybe. We hope so. Yeah. All right. So one of your other major rounds is banking, and there has been a lot said about banking this year. I don't know how you keep up with it, Jono, because banking seems to be boring, but there's so much talk about it.
Yeah, I'm pretty tired with it, actually. I'm looking forward to a summer break. I guess, banking touches everyone. We all have a bank account. We all have our daily, weekly interactions with banks. And obviously this year we've had the ComCom's final report into the retail banking sector. And then at the tail end of the year, we've had the Select Committee inquiry going a little bit further. We've chance for MPs to ask some pointed questions of the banking executives, i.e. how much do they earn a year and whether they are competitive.
That's right. Let's just talk about it. There seems to be the question, doesn't it, or the question that an MP, if they want to get noticed, maybe on some other kinds of news media, that's the question. What do you think?
Well, it's their chance to, I guess, probe a little bit deeper. My thinking is what's really going to be achieved from this Select Committee inquiry, given the fact that we've had the ComCom out this year. Could have been maybe better to do the inquiry in a year or so, let the ComCom's recommendations bed in, because the government has obviously committed to beefing up Kiwibank, making it the fifth biggest player in the market. So my thinking is that could have come later, but we heard a lot from the ComCom and the government that the sector isn't as competitive as it should be. But when I go and chat to the chief executives of the largest banks, like, no, nothing to see here. We are competitive. We're fighting on a daily basis. So I sort of walk away and go, okay, who do I believe here? Is it competitive? Is it not? I think colleague Brent Edwards mentioned to you recently that, we have got 4 big players in the country for a population of about 5 million people, plus a number of smaller providers. So we probably do have a number of banks per head of population. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, look, they are there and they are dominant, because if you think about boosting up Kiwibank, even the amount of money that they're talking about giving Kiwibank won't increase its loan book by a massive percentage. So whether that's enough to actually be a disruptor, or whether you actually got to look to other banks, other styles of banks. And I'm talking about neobanks here. I mean, there is perhaps the possibility that if they reduce the capital amount required for a bank here, that could open up that kind of competition. But that's going to take some time as well. So I think
the Reserve Bank is. The Reserve Bank is getting used to those new neo-style banks as well. It's looking at how do we actually approve these players into the future, and I think it's something that's not going to happen overnight, but as years go on, I think we're going to see a lot more competition in that space. But I also think about, maybe it's a culture shift too with the existing players. How do they serve customers? Are they serving customers well, or are they putting profit ahead of their customers?
One of the things that the Reserve Bank, was it the Reserve Bank that noted, or the Commerce Commission noted, is that Kiwis are really sticky with their bank accounts. They change a marriage more than they change their bank. Anyway, all right. Hey, let's move on to stories that really stuck out for you personally. And I would talk about Hawke's Bay recovery here. Now, you are from Hawke's Bay, aren't you?
Yeah, I spent the first 18 years of my life there and to and fro back forward through the years. So, personal.
What was it like going back there to report on the recovery?
Yeah, I sort of felt a bit of a weight on my shoulders, to do my hometown proud and to also do NBR proud with this extensive series. Some places that we visited, i.e. Eastdale and Parkawai, I hadn't been to since the cyclone. That was pretty confronting, eye-opening to see basically stuck in time, houses that still had silt and muck through. I think the bridge in Parkawai was cut in the middle, so we did sort of a lot of filming around there and what we call piece to cameras from that spot. So it was pretty confronting, but what really shone through for me was the resilience of all the businesses we spoke to. That word resilience, when we talk about surviving or thriving, it was a matter of survival for a number of these businesses. They had to get back up and running fast, so they didn't lose their customers. So it was a really thoughtful series that we did, and we tried to show at the end of the week some positivity about growth, businesses that were looking to expand and also head overseas. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's whip through a couple of other things here that we've got on the list. Let's talk about consistency. So, it has been, as you say, tough economically, but that doesn't mean that some businesses have found a way through. Who would you say fits that category?
Yeah, well, when I look at those sorts of companies that have bounced back this year or who are consistent, I think my colleagues Hamish McNichol talked about it was Tower Insurance who bounced back into profit this year after having a pretty tough 2023 with the cyclone. So that's one company that I've been keeping an eye on. They also joined the top 50 index, which was a milestone for them. And I guess it's an appropriate time for the Chief Executive Blair Turnbull to step aside. I think he's getting his running shoes on and going for a bit of a hike overseas. A consistent performer, I think, would be someone like Turner's Automotive. That company's run very well, and I can just see a path to profitability for them. They've got hitting some targets next year as well, and they might hit them early. So that's another company that's stuck out for me this year. I guess you've got your main freights and your freightways who are consistent, fighting off all those headwinds around a tough economy. On the flip side, though, a company I've kept an eye on this year and will continue to do so next year, Move Logistics. They've had a pretty tough year. Their loss deepened. They've had a lot of changes at a board level and a corporate level. They also had a dispute over the coastal shipping, which they've resolved with the transport agency. But they've had some interesting hires too. They've brought in, aka Mr. Fix-It, Paul Millward. He's come across from Two Cheap Cars, which he turned around pretty quickly too. There've also been a couple of recent hires as well. So Move Logistics is one I'm keeping an eye on for next year.
All right. Well, let's look forward to next year. We always sort of wrap this up with a what's on your radar for 25. So that's one company that's on your radar. What else is on your radar, Jono?
It'll be the Reserve Bank, I guess. They'll be out the gate in February. They've also already indicated another rate cut, possibly 50 basis points in February. So that will be good news for people with mortgages, not so if you've got savings in the bank, you're relying on term deposits. But yeah, the Reserve Bank, I'll be keeping a close watch on too. I guess the general economy, we've been in basically a recession for about 3 years. Whether there's going to be some growth in the first few months of the year. But I'm also going to keep a close watch on inflation.
Why?
The inauguration of...
Isn't it just going one way, or is it going... Yeah, tell me why inflation is on your radar.
Well, if you look at the components, I guess the domestic side of inflation is still high and out of the target band.
Right.
So it will be whether that continues to fall. But because a lot of the heavy lifting has been done by the international components of inflation, so it's whether those overseas factors like Donald Trump, the Middle East conflict, Ukraine, Russia, whether they put a bit of pressure on international prices coming in. So those are the things to closely watch, I think, in the early part of next year.
Right, okay. I just wonder, I know there's one other thing that you've been keeping an eye on, and that is like what's been happening with the EVs. You've had a whole year without the rebate, and there's been mass discounting, isn't there? I mean, is the EV market still going to just really struggle, I guess?
Well, I think that's the feeling for the early part of next year. As you notice, there's probably a lot of heavy discounting going along at this point in time for the year. I think the cheapest EV you can buy in the country is just under $30,000. So that's a lot cheaper from when we had the rebates in place even 12 months ago. So, yeah, there's a lot of heavy discounting going on at the moment. Now's the best time to buy an EV if you're in the market. Right. But, yeah, that's a market I'm going to keep a close watch on. The government's obviously putting a lot of focus on highways, tolling. It's certainly scaled back the clean car standard, which puts onus on the manufacturers when they import vehicles. So, yeah, it's an interesting time for that market. Sales are down with the general economy. But as you say, a lot of heavy discounting. So
what you're telling me, John, is that I should go out and buy myself an EV for Christmas?
You should, Simon. You'll ask Santa very nicely.
Okay. All right. Hey, Jono, thanks so much for coming on the Pod's Summer Series. We'll catch you in the new year.
Thanks, Simon.